Hi. Okay, so I made a video about the wage gap, and my butt hurts from the amount of fire I've been getting a bit. And one of the common misconceptions with that video is that because I mentioned a female predominant topic and neglected to include male topics in addition to that, even though I did state forthright that it was just one-sided at this point, although poverty obviously is not one-sided. Because I failed to address issues that affect men, I've been called a feminazi. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about men's lack of rights, and it's thanks to the male-centric society that has been brought up. And that just the simple, obvious fact that this thing that's going on, this sexist imbalance thing that's going on, yeah, it affects you guys too. And I noticed today, this really was weird, 80% of my viewership is male. So I know that I'm talking mostly to men now. And so this video is for not only for the people who got mad at me, but for feminists like myself who are male, who would like me to bring up the obvious imbalances that do occur thanks to the society that is not a matriarchy. It's the other word, but I don't like using it, so we're just going to say penis society for now. No, we'll just use patriarchy because it's the word, it's the buzzword that you guys like, and it'll make you feel better because I used it so that you guys can use it against me. Anyway, let's talk about what men lack rights with because of this stupid society that we've entrenched ourselves in. And one of the number one things that I want to discuss is circumcision. So I guess trigger warning on that. A lot of people when we talk about circumcision mention female genital mutilation, and for good reason. That is an incredible topic that should be open for discussion, and it shouldn't happen. Really, save health reasons, there's no reason for it. I feel 100% the same way about male circumcision. And I'm sure most of you did not know that. I think that there's absolutely no need for that surgery. And I don't understand why hospitals push for it, especially if they're not even religious affiliated, because that's the thing. That's the default in this country. And in North America, that, oh, you have a boy who's forced, going to get rid of it. Why? Because it's cleaner. Says who? It's not. It's, sorry, it frustrates me because I've seen the aftermath of a baby being circumcised firsthand, and it traumatized me completely. I know that a lot of mothers don't agree with it, but I don't understand why they go through with it, and I don't understand why some men also are for it, especially if they themselves have been mutilated. I do consider it genital mutilation, and I know that a lot of people are going to cite religious freedoms in this. And I ask you, why would you do that to your baby, especially if you're going to do Orthodox religion? Do you know what they do for circumcision in Orthodox religion? I'm not going to say it on my channel because I'm disgusted by it. But look it up and you'll see why I'm against that even more so. There's no reason for circumcision at all, period. Save maybe one simple, one simple exception, and that is disease. It can happen. It just like it can with women's labia folds. You can get disease there. And if it's a disease that can't be cured and that will cause the child problems in the future, then yes, that's an exception. But to mutilate your children with misconceptions of hygiene, which isn't actually factual any longer, with myths of sexual prowess and, like I said, the hygiene, religious bullshit. Like, if you want to do that later in your life, if you want to devote yourself to a God in that way, and your choice is to get circumcised, that's your choice. But as parents, you are taking that choice away from your child, and it is a choice that will affect him for life. And you shouldn't have, like, you don't have to deal with that penis on a daily basis. Your child does. Just don't fucking mutilate your kid's genitals. Like, I'm not, it's gotta stop. It's gotta stop. Like, stop. Just stop. It's just, there's no point anymore. Like, we are a secular society, theoretically. Therefore, secular hospitals should not be pushing Freudian slip? Pushing. See why I don't edit? For that kind of bullshit. And I can't talk about it anymore. My next one is something that is also personal anecdote to me. I love my father very much. He's not a perfect man, but he's my dad. And one of the things that I had to experience growing up was seeing the pain of him losing his kids through divorce hearings, not once, but twice. Here in Canada, they generally favor the woman to be the default parent. Regardless, well, or usually they usually cite that, again, I can't cite a source on this. It's generally what I've experienced. So again, look it up for yourselves if you're doubtful. I always encourage that, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. I'd love to be corrected if I'm wrong, because they generally favor women. I think it's as long as they're in the same pay bracket, or if the woman has more money, then they tend to favor the woman. In terms of money, if it's shown that the woman can financially take care of a child or children on her own salary, first of all, why does she need so much child support if she can support the kids on her own? I am for fathers taking part in their children's lives, but if you're going to give the children solely to their mother, how do you expect them to contribute that way? I have always been against that kind of arrangement. If it should go for what's best for the children. If the father's a deadbeat, the father's a deadbeat. But if the mother is a deadbeat, then the mother is a deadbeat. I'm not saying my mother was a deadbeat. My mother was fabulous. Oh, was she fabulous. They made the right choice in my case, but I wish that they had given more time to my father. I missed out when I was younger, only seeing him every other weekend. I think it should have been better, more frequent, better spaced out. And when it comes to things like that, I don't think that it should be based on sex. I think I'm more than obvious in my stance that it should be based on finance and ability to care. As for child support, again, yeah, if some men want to do that, then that's great. And many degrees men should help out with the stuff that the kids need, like dental, eyewear, shit like that. But at the same time, you gotta let them see your kids. It's their kids too. One of the main things also, to move on to another point that has been brought up to me, is the complete disregard and ignorance when it comes to men who are homeless and mentally ill. So I'm going to address that right now, because I've been told that I am an ignorant hypocrite for my lack of knowledge in these areas, when in fact that's actually not true. I'm mentally ill and I'm physically ill. I've had to go to many hospitals, and I've had to go to many different cities. And even in my own stupid little suburb town, I see it. I see men, only men, wandering the streets who are sicker than me, who are insulted, disregarded, completely like dropped by the system, and they have to panhandle and they have to stay on the streets, and Recently, in a town next to mine, mentally ill man had a heart attack and died in one of the restaurants that he was taking shelter in. And he had been homeless in that city for 13 years. And one of the things that really angered me, like, I understood the sentiment, and I thought, okay, do both. They raised money for his funeral to be buried in that town, as well as a commemorative bench in his honor. What they don't understand about this is that it's both a hug and a slap, because you're commemorating that this person existed and that people will know about him. But when he existed, what the fuck did you do? Did you help him? Did you give him money? I know that the profiteers who in front of he panhandled in front of, did feed him and did help him, but did they not? Like, where were his workers? Why was he let out of the hospital? Why was he so ignored and disregarded? I have never seen a woman in that kind of disrespectful treatment. And I've been to Oakville, to both sides of Toronto and back. I've been to Brampton, Mississauga, all of those. And say maybe 1 out of 100. They're all men. And 80% of them have mental illness, and there's not enough funding for men's shelters, men's homeless shelters. We have lots of women's shelters, for which I'm grateful, but we either need to kind of pony up on the men's shelters or get them back in the hospitals. These men are sons and fathers and brothers and cousins of family. Where are the family? Like, I understand that there's only so much that a family member can do, and that sometimes you have to let them go in order to get them back on their own feet. But I don't understand the mentality of not helping once in a while, especially during winter. Do you know how many people freeze to death? And how many of them are men? And in relation to that, I'm getting really upset about this. I'm sorry. In relation to that, many of the men have to survive, and they have to turn to sex work too. And most people think, oh, only women have to turn to sex work when they're homeless. Don't be naive. It's men too. And that's the problem. That naivete, that ignorance, that assumption, that's a sexist assumption on both regards. And the problem is that there's definitely very little protection for female sex workers, but there's no protection for male sex workers. None. And that is especially true when it comes to male rape victims, especially if they're prostitutes as well, sex workers as well. They don't get protection. They don't get help. They're not taken seriously. And they get addicted to drugs, to hooking, and they don't get the attention they deserve. And all these young men are dying and for such stupid reasons. And the sexism in this is ridiculous. Anyway, I got really serious there, so I'm going to try and end it with a lighter note, because there's one more thing I'd like to discuss. And I know a lot of 90 kids will agree with me on this, but it's been predominant since the 80s. And I don't know why you guys, like, especially since most of the producers are men. But in sitcoms, the dumb dad stereotype, or archetype, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, save maybe that 70s show. And even then there was a dumb dad archetype to offset the smart dad archetype. Why is this a thing? Why are dads stupid? Like, why is it just the men that are stupid? Why do they always have to do dumb, embarrassing things? Why? I get that there's a degree of comedy in it, but when it's become an archetype, what the fuck? I am a feminist for these reasons too. And I brought up the wage gap because I grew up middle low class, and I wanted to share my personal experience about it. It wasn't received well because it was a personal anecdote. And I get that, and especially since I didn't provide statistics because I didn't have them, because it's a personal anecdote. But I digress. I don't have any statistics for the things that I'm discussing here. But again, this is experience, especially in the past 5 years in which I've struggled with my own physical illnesses and my mental illnesses. I've been noticing these things more and more. And I have been listening to the angry men who do comment on my channel. I listen to you. I may not agree with you. And if you go too far and start trolling me, I will completely disregard you because you're not worth my time. But for things where you bring up actual good points, I pause and I think about it and I listen and I read what you're saying between the lines and I try and get through the gobbledygook of the anger that you spew in order to get to the point. And I hope that I've managed to get to some of your points here and that I've managed to at least somewhat show you that I'm on your side, whether you like it or not. Anyway, I'm running out of time, so I gotta cut it short. Whatever. Like me, hate me. I am the internet's burden. Bye.